I haven't been doing much on the bows lately. I've sort of slightly lost my mojo, but you've got to wait till it's something that really grips you, that you want to be doing. So I spent some time tinkering around with my lathe, making another unnecessary accessory, which has been quite fun. I might post that for people who are interested in the machinery and that. Now I thought, but what else is holding me back with this bow? And then it dawned on me, it's A, the fact that I've got to clamp it on here, which I don't like doing, and B, it's the reflex. Well, the two are combined, because with a lot of reflex, as you start pulling, the bow can flip over. And the other problem with reflex is that it takes a lot of poundage to get the tips back far enough to brace it. And you keep reducing the weight, eventually you get it back to brace, then you start pulling it and find that what you were hoping was going to be a 50-pounder is in fact a 30-pounder. But I'll persevere anyway. It's good to do things that are outside your comfort zone. The other thing there's been a lot of lately is, on the primitive bow making page on Facebook, there's been an awful lot of newbies jumping in saying, I live in so and so, what wood's available, how do I start, what should I do? And there's two sets of advice really. A lot of people jump in and say, for your first bow, make a board bow, you know, from a pre-cut, we've got a cat down here, from, you know, pre-cut timber, which is fine and it's simple. It's a good way to start, especially if you've got access to hickory. And in those cases you can to some extent make a bow by numbers. I've got the cat fussing at me. Whereas I tend to take the other view and say you don't make a bow by numbers. You don't make a bow and then tiller it. You take a stave and you tiller it until it becomes a bow. The difference being, if you're working with a stave, you've got to work with all the undulations and what have you. But of course you've still got to rough it out in the first place, and it helps if you've got a bandsaw. And this is the problem, because someone starting out doesn't have a bandsaw, they've probably got very few tools, they've got no idea what to do. In which case, to me, the answer is go back and do what you should have been doing when you were 10-year-old, and probably were. Just cut yourself a stick, hazel, ash, hickory, anything. You don't even have to shape it particularly. It helps if it tapers at either end and you get a string on it and you see what it does. But the thing is to see what it does, experiment, find out what happens and learn why it went wrong. There's this whole engineering thing, this quality control thing that was going around many years ago. We had a consultant come in, this great concept, right first time, you know, make everything right first time and you don't waste all time and materials and energy on scrap and rework and all the rest of it. It's total nonsense. The way you develop anything or the way you learn anything is what I call whack-whap, W-A-Q-A-P, wrong as quick as possible. So get yourself a stick, carve it to a taper with a draw knife, an axe, a machete, a penknife, whatever. Get a string on it, see how it bends. When it fails, try and work out why it fails. And as a kid, well, 10 years old, I'd make bows out of hazel. It'd shoot great for a couple of weeks and they'd break because it started drying out and seasoning and they were getting stiffer, and I'd bend them more, and what happens if I pull it a bit further. But you gradually learn. So jump in, just have a go. You'll learn so much from having a go at your first bow. Meanwhile, back at the plot. So, the last video was the same as this, basically. But it's always a mistake to jump back in and do the work that you think you remembered from last time, because you'll get it wrong. So let's see how it's bending. I've also decided I'm going to try and make it into a flight bow of 50 pound. So let's see what it actually does. Can I get it anywhere near brace? See, that would be there's 60. That left limb's looking quite nice, and that's about a low brace. So that right limb's stiff. Right limb's stiff. If I can get that bending and brace it, we'll have an idea, won't we? But of course I've cheated, I've got that roughed out, but I've only got it roughed out because I've got 50, 60 years of experience of making bows. So I knew roughly how to rough it out in the first place. I'd also just made the other walnut bow from the same walnut. The way to make a bow is to copy a similar bow, you know, but of course if you're beginning you haven't got a similar bow to copy, so it's a matter of, yeah, make your first bow. If you can make anything that shoots, even if it's only a 20 pounder, if you can make anything that shoots, you've done a good job. Learn from that, make the next one better. And the most important thing of all is get yourself a cat. You have to have a cat if you're going to make successful bows. Isn't that right, Puss? Yes, that's definitely right. You've got to get a cat. So, right, that's a quick review. And I'm going to carry on. And there'll be more videos. You'll be able to follow it if you want to or not. It's up to you. I'm just doing this to try and give my thoughts. They're not guaranteed to be right. I'll do some work on this upper limb. I did mark which limb it was because it's easy to end up working on the wrong limb. But this immediately raises some questions for the beginner. I've got a shave horse, you might not have one. Something you need is a way of holding the bow steady. It can be just an ordinary vice on a workbench. If you haven't got that, you can hold one end against the floor and work with an axe or a machete, whatever. Obviously a shave horse is really handy, but a decent bench vice with a movable support at the other end to hold the other limb will do you just as well. Tools, like I said, a machete, an axe. I've actually got two draw knives, they both came off eBay. This one's a nice one with a little bit of curve on it, but had a bit of a nick in the blade there. But I used that for ages. It's a lovely draw knife, but then I saw this bigger one which is actually straight bladed. It was relatively cheap, so I bought that and refurbished the handles. Often old ones off eBay or from a boot sale or, you know, a yard sale, they can be better than the modern ones. It's just sometimes the manufacturer doesn't choose the appropriate steel or the appropriate heat treating for the purpose. Other thing is a spoke shave. This is just a dirt cheap spoke shave with a flat sole. Don't get one with a curved sole, they're horrendous to try and use. But like a lot of tools, cheap tools are fine if you take the trouble to sharpen them and set them up and use them properly. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking a tool will be ready to use out the box. It rarely is. Right, back to the actual job. The real problem is how much wood do you have to remove to get a desired effect? Well, again, you'll only find out by trial and error, but if you use your fingers, I can feel it starts getting thicker there. I can feel it's fat there and it's fat here. I can feel the difference in the limb. So if I just aim for this even taper that I was talking about, we should be all right. Yes, it's thinner there than there, but it's certainly bulgy in the middle. So I'll take off some wood and we'll see what it does. The temptation is to either go too cautious, you're not taking enough wood off, nothing seems to be happening, so then you go mad, reach for the power tools and take off too much and spoil it. It's finding that compromise. If you want to go mad and heavy-handed, do it early in the process. So if I want to go mad, do it now. Take quite a lot off now and then slow up later. As you get nearer a finished bow, you have to work quite delicately and with more caution. again, the temptation is to just keep on doing this. Well, why am I doing this? Well, I'm removing wood. Well, if I don't check how much I remove, it's a pretty pointless exercise. So every stroke of a tool should have a purpose, and you should check it's doing what you want it to. I've removed enough there, I need to blend that in. There's a knot there. While you're working the wood, look at it. The other trick is it's often easier to remove wood off the corners slightly and then go down the middle. So you're doing it as 3 cuts effectively, edge, edge, middle. It also allows you to check that the edges are looking reasonably evenly tapered. And if you do overdo it at the edge, then the middle may still be a bit thick and you still have enough wood to play with. Right, that's not taken a huge amount off. It's probably not taken enough. But I'll pop it back on the tiller and we'll have a look. That's the other thing. Keep checking your work. If you're not bored with putting it up and down on the tiller, you're not doing it enough. Now the guys in the States especially tend to go in for what they call floor tillering, which is putting one end on the floor and leaning on it and seeing how it bends. That is looking better. I tend to put it on the tiller just for consistency, if you like, but because I've got to clamp it up there, it's a bit of a pain in the backside. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this floor tillering. So if I bend it like that, you should be able to see. That was the limb I've just worked on. I'll do it again here just to try and make sure it's in shot. And you can hear from the way I'm grunting and groaning, there's a bit of strain there. Right, that'll do for that. I'll stick it back on the tiller so you can actually see the results. Right, you saw me do that bit of work. We can now look at the results. But something else to note is I take the time and trouble to get it on a tiller, to get the camera in a decent position, to take decent video. The reason for that is it lets me see what the bow's doing. It lets me see it dynamically as I flex it back and forth. It lets me go and review it in the comfort of being indoors with a cup of tea, and stops me being too hasty. Because this is just a single car garage I'm working in, so I can't actually get far enough away to have a good look at it. That camera is mounted right on the back wall, so it's giving me that extra viewpoint. So right, let's see if it's made any difference. It might not have done. Still stiff. I think it's moving more than it was. Yeah, it's definitely coming down more than it was. So that could possibly get braced now, but I'd like to see a bit more off that limb. In fact, you can see your eyes, well actually it's unfair, it looks thicker there, it's because the limb's slightly twisted, but that's where it needs to come off. I'll mark that with a pencil. Other writing implements are also available. Chalk's good stuff. I like a bit of chalk. Right, I'll take a little bit more off there, and next time it will be braced.